on we go then. Here's Banquo, and his response on first meeting the witches in Act 1, Scene 3. What are these so withered and wild in their attire that look not like the inhabitants of the earth, and yet are on't? Live you, or are you aught that man may question? You seem to understand me by each at once her choppy finger laying upon her skinny lips. You should be women, and yet your beards forbid me to interpret that you are so. Okay, so lovely bit of alliteration at the start. They're so withered and wild in their attire from Banquo, and then he sort of proceeds into showing he's a bit of a poet himself, much like his comrade at arms Macbeth, and a series of juxtapositions. There's firstly a juxtaposition between sort of the world of the living and the world of the dead, or at least the world of the natural and the world of the supernatural, represented by the soldiers, Macbeth and Banquo, and then the witches. So there is one juxtaposition. There's another juxtaposition in terms of Macbeth's reaction to the witches and Banquo's reaction to the witches. Macbeth is rapt with all. I think 2 or 3 times Shakespeare used the word rapt, like he's in a trance. He's obsessed by them. He's immediately taken with them and amazed. Banquo is completely different. He's sort of he taking the Mickey a bit more. He's kind of dismissive. He's he doesn't got no real respect for them or no real faith in them, and just sort of slightly rude, kind of like offhand with them. So a couple of juxtapositions there. Then also you get a triple of juxtapositions. Are you alive, or are you something that man might question, like something from the forces of darkness? Do you live on this earth, or are you not? And then also, you look like women, but you got these beards, so you're kind of androgynous. So again, you've got that trinity. We had it already with the 3 witches. We've had it with the 3 weather elements, and now we have it with his 3 juxtaposition he's using about them. Okay, again, you got this, and what goes with that is a sense of duality, that they seem to be all of those things at the same time. They seem to be half dead, but they're alive and they're in front of him. They don't look like they're from round here, like from outer space or somewhere, or perhaps from hell. But yet they're on the earth, and then they've got this androgynous look. So there's this duality with them there, and again, this unholy trinity. He has more questions, 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 and that contributes to this. The start, the whole of Act 1, there's just a series of questions. Shakespeare very much establishing a tone of mystery, of uncertainty, of confusion. Okay, and next up then, by the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes. Very, very famous one. Why is it so famous? I don't know really. There are more significant lines in Macbeth. I think it's quite famous because, for one, there's just a ring to it. The way it sounds, it's a rhyming couplet, obviously, so that makes it the rhyme makes it sort of easily to remember and recall. But also the meter here. I might come on to that in terms of the rhythm in a second, but it's perhaps most famous because it's a key sign that Macbeth has very much turned, and that he has chosen this fate, or perhaps fate has chosen for him this evil path, and the witches can already sense from the fact that their thumbs are tingling away. They're pricking, that something evil is coming. So he is no longer the honourable warrior on the battlefield at the start. He is now just something evil that these witches can sense before he's even arrived. You've got a touch of sibilance here, which is the repetition of the S sound. So thumbs, something wicked this way comes. Which again you can often refer sibilance to the sound of a snake or the hissing of a snake, and refer that to Satan in the Garden of Eden, seducing Eve and causing all sorts of evil. So it's a connection to Satan and evil. Okay, so it confirms that Macbeth is perhaps, they are supernatural because they can sense these things, is the hint. But Macbeth is perhaps completely now in bed with the supernatural. This is where he returns to them, as I mentioned at the start of this video, in his hour of need, which is quite significant. Another thing that perhaps gives it a certain importance, or has made it so easy for people to recall, is this rhythm, the meter. And this is called a falling rhythm, where the first syllable of each part is the emphasized one. So, by the pricking of my thumbs, dun 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 dun. Shakespeare really, really carefully chooses these words where the stress falls on the first syllable of them. So something wicked. It's not something wicked this way comes. Right? It's something wicked this way comes. So it adds to the sense that they're chanting, they have this sort of innate instinctive power, and perhaps they know truths that we mere mortals don't. But the language trips off their tongue like that. Okay, lastly then, just a lovely bit of witchiness. Finger of birth, strangled babe, ditch delivered by a drape or a drab. Well, what does this mean? Well, basically they're chucking stuff into the cauldron. They're chucking all sorts of things, all sorts of parts of a tiger and a shark and a snake, fenny snake, and all the rest of it, as well as body parts. And this is a particularly nasty one. Okay, so what they've got here is a baby that has been strangled at birth. So the minute it was born, it's been strangled, and just the finger of it. What's happened to the rest of the baby, we're not clear. And a bit more detail about how this baby came into the world. It was delivered, i.e., born in a ditch. That's nice. By a drabe, or a drab was a prostitute. Okay, so you've got this poor little baby born to a prostitute, murdered at birth, and then has had his finger removed somehow. They chuck that in. So there's horrendous violence to it. This is supposed to be really shocking to the Elizabethan audience or Jacobean audience, and Shakespeare is, sort of provoking his audience. A series of plosives here with the f and the b and the d sounds. There's a violence to the sound of the words as they throw these things in here. And I think it's worth you could perhaps mention. This is after all a play. This is supposed to be performed by players in a playhouse. Not, Shakespeare's not writing for professors to be studying him 500 years in the future. He's trying to entertain people, and the witches scenes were massive crowd pleasers. You can imagine that the fire burning, the smoke rising, the lights down, the chanting. The sense of evil, the sense of wickedness, the sense of, oh, we shouldn't really be seeing this. You can see why the Puritans wanted to shut down the playhouses, because there's all this witchiness and the witchcraft and wizardry going on. I think the pure theatre of it, the sense of it being a spectacle, would have been something of great excitement to the audience, and it still is today. But certainly in those days when there's no film, TV, internet, you got no smartphones and no apps, seeing a play would be the highlight of your life for most people, and certainly scenes like this would have been hugely dramatic. Okay, and this is very much Shakespeare emphasizing just whom Macbeth has got into bed with. The supernatural forces of darkness they're not just a bit bad, they're really bad. They're really disgusting, and by extension, Macbeth has also sort of dirtied up himself and brought disrepute and brought disgusting kind of things to the crown of Scotland, to the country of Scotland, so much so that he is increasingly described as a disease, or Scotland is described as diseased, with Macbeth as the sort of cancer that needs removing, that is making the rest of the entire country suffer. And the suggestion here is that has been achieved, or that has come about through Macbeth's association with the witches and with the forces of darkness. Okay, I hope that was of interest to you and some use to you, and has made some of the elements of Shakespeare's use of the witches and the supernatural a little bit clearer. Okay, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe. If you leave some comments in the section below, tell me ways in which I could make these better, or subjects which would be of use to you and your revision. Okay.
Under pressure.